He built an empire by ignoring people. Then he ignored the only person who truly loved him. The champagne was warm by the time I noticed her name on my phone. I almost set the glass down. Almost. The ballroom was full of people who wanted things from me. My father was laughing too loudly near the fireplace. My fiancée, Celeste, was somewhere being perfect in a way that had never once moved me. The name on the screen was Ren. I sent it to voicemail. 30 seconds later, she called again. That should have told me everything. Instead, I silenced the phone, slid it into my breast pocket, and accepted a fresh glass from a passing tray. I was in the middle of toasting my own future. I did not call her back. Her name was Ren Callaway. She had appeared in my life 7 years earlier as nobody, the kind of person that powerful rooms simply do not see. She was the youngest daughter of a business associate of my father's, a man who owed debts he was embarrassed by, a man who brought her to dinners the way you might bring an apology, quietly, hoping it went unnoticed. The first time I saw her she was 17. She had knocked a full tray of drinks off a server's arm at one of my family's charity galas. Crystal shattered across white marble. The room turned to stare. She had gone absolutely still, eyes like a person waiting to be punished. I remember thinking she was a liability in a room like this. Small, out of place, her dress too simple, her posture too uncertain. I said something sharp. I don't remember what, exactly. Something designed to end a conversation that hadn't really begun. She said, "I'm sorry," in a voice so careful it barely made sound. I forgot her before I reached the next room. But she didn't forget me. She started appearing. Not obtrusively. Not in a way I could name as Pursuit. A book I had mentioned once, left at my assistant Diana's desk. No note. Just the book, a page marked with a single dried wildflower. A thermos of black coffee delivered to a late board meeting. Just the right strength. She knew, somehow, that I took nothing in it. One November, during the worst acquisition war of my career, I came out of a parking garage at 2 in the morning to find my car's windshield scraped clean of ice. The lot was empty. I stood there in the dark and could not explain it. Diana started calling her the ghost. "You have a ghost," she told me, amused. "She only appears when you're exhausted or bleeding." I told Diana to stop being sentimental. But I noticed, and I let it mean nothing, and I moved on. She sent a letter once. An actual letter. Paper and ink. I didn't read it. I passed it to Diana. "File it," I said. Diana looked at me with an expression I ignored. "All of it? Unless it's legally actionable." She filed it. I thought about it for exactly 3 minutes. Then Langford Partners tried to absorb 2 of my coastal subsidiaries, and I forgot Ren Callaway existed. I was good at forgetting her. That's the truth I've had to carry. I was extraordinary at it. The night of the engagement party I was 34 years old and completely certain of my own invulnerability. Celeste Hargrove was an excellent strategic match. Her family had capital I needed in the North Atlantic Energy Corridor. She was intelligent and elegant, and we had an understanding that required nothing as inconvenient as love. I was building something enormous. There was no room in that architecture for softness. So when my phone showed Ren's name that second time and then went quiet, I turned back to the room, raised my glass, and smiled. I didn't find out for 11 days. Not because no one tried to tell me. Diana had left 3 messages. I was in Edinburgh closing the Hargrove deal. My phone was on a restricted list. Only 12 numbers could reach me directly. Ren's was not one of them. When I finally returned to London and sat down in my own office for the first time in nearly 2 weeks, Diana was standing at my desk before I had taken off my coat. Her face was wrong. Diana had worked for me for 9 years. I could read her face the way you read weather. This was a kind of weather I had never seen. "Sir," she said, "there's something you need to know before you look at anything else." She placed a single printed page on my desk. I picked it up. A death notice. From a regional paper in the west of England. Ren Callaway, 24, passed away on the morning of the 14th following injuries sustained in a road collision the previous evening. She is survived by her older sister, Mara Callaway. The 14th, the night of my engagement party. Something moved through me that I could not name. Not yet. Something seismic and silent, like a crack forming in the bedrock before the collapse. "When did this come in?" "She called you first," Diana said. "Twice. Then she called me. She said she was at the hospital and that she had been trying to reach you and that Diana stopped, pressed her lips together. She asked me to tell you that she hoped the party went well." The silence in the room was enormous. "Those were her exact words?" I asked. "Word for word." I set the notice down, picked up my pen, set it down again. My hands didn't know what to do with themselves. "She called from the hospital," I said. She was already in the hospital when she called me. Yes. I sat with that for a long time. Diana didn't move. What else? She survived through the night. She asked the nurses not to contact your office. She said she didn't want to disrupt your celebration. Diana's voice, so controlled, fractured once, briefly. She passed at 6:14 in the morning, about an hour after you would have been making your engagement toast. I stood up, walked to the window. The city was grey and massive and continuing. Where is her sister? I don't know. Find her. Mara Callaway found me first. She was waiting outside my building on a Tuesday morning, standing in the rain without an umbrella, which told me she had been there long enough not to care anymore. I recognized her from photographs. She was taller than Ren, harder in the jaw, same grey-green eyes, but where Ren's had always looked careful, Mara's looked like something that had been careful once and given up on it. She didn't move when I approached, didn't adjust her coat. She looked at me the way you look at something you're deciding whether to destroy. I wanted to see you in person, she said, before I decided what I thought of you. I just learned, I said. I was out of the country. I know you were out of the country. Her voice was flat. I know exactly where you were and what you were doing. I know you sent her call to voicemail. I know you went back to your party. There was nothing I could say to that. She studied my face. I was going to hit you, she said. I practiced it, actually. The drive here. I had a whole plan. You still can. Something shifted in her expression. Not softened. Just shifted. She wouldn't have wanted that. She never wanted anything that might hurt you. We stood in the rain. Taxis moved past us. She was in surgery for 4 hours, Mara said. Her spleen was ruptured. Her left lung was partially collapsed. The doctor said if she'd reached the hospital an hour earlier, she stopped, breathed. But she waited. The accident happened at 8:30 in the evening. She waited nearly 2 hours before she let anyone call emergency services. My throat closed. Why? Because it was the night of your engagement party. Mara said it simply, like a verdict. And she said she didn't want ambulances and hospital calls showing up on your phone and making a scene during something important to you. I felt the ground shift under my feet. She was lying in the road, Mara said quietly, and she was worried about ruining your evening. The rain kept falling. I didn't trust my voice. When she was conscious in the hospital, Mara continued, she made them take her phone. She called you herself. The nurses said she was laughing while she did it. They thought she was in shock. She wasn't. She was. Mara's composure cracked, briefly, like ice under sudden pressure. She was just glad you answered, even for a minute. She said it was enough. I remembered that call. The voice like she was standing somewhere full of autumn light. I probably can't make it. Something came up. I had assumed she was being polite about not wanting to attend. I had not heard what was underneath. I had not listened. What do you want from me? I asked. My voice came out wrong. Too raw. Mara looked at me for a long time. Nothing, she said finally. I don't want anything from you. I came here because she loved you and you should have to see what that cost her. And because she looked away. Because she left something for you. She made me promise. Even when I told her you didn't deserve it. She reached into her coat. Handed me a water-damaged envelope. My name on the front. Her handwriting. She left that with me 2 years ago, Mara said. She said she didn't think she'd ever give it to you herself. She said she was too much of a coward. That was a lie, incidentally. She was the bravest person I ever knew. She turned and walked back toward the street. At the curb she stopped. There will never be another person in the world who loves you the way she did. She didn't look back. I thought you should know that. Even if it doesn't mean anything to you now. She got into a taxi. I stood in the rain. The envelope in my hands. I hired Marcus Webb 2 days later. Marcus had worked for my family since before I was born. He operated in rooms that lawyers couldn't enter and answered to no one except me. He was 61 years old and had the quiet, unhurried manner of a man who had seen everything and been surprised by very little. I need the complete picture, I told him. From the beginning. Everything connected to Ren Callaway. Everything she touched in the last 3 years. Every person, every account, every move. He looked at me steadily. And the accident itself? Especially the accident itself. He nodded once. Left without another word. While I waited, I opened the file Diana had assembled from her own channels. Ren Callaway. Her father's business had failed. Badly. She had taken a job at 20 as an administrative assistant at a property management firm, well below what her education justified. She'd been quietly sending money to her father, who had never acknowledged it. She'd had a flat the size of a storage unit. She'd kept one nice coat, which her sister later told me she wore to every event she attended on the rare occasion she entered the world I occupied. Half a year's savings had gone toward a watch she'd left at my office once as a birthday gift. I had not known it was my birthday when it arrived. Diana had signed my thank you card. I had never known who sent it. I pressed my palms flat against the desk, breathed, kept reading. Marcus's first report arrived 72 hours later. He sat across from me in my office at midnight and spoke without inflection. The truck that struck her vehicle was registered to a driver named Colin Firth, not the actor, a logistics contractor based in Bristol. He has 2 prior incidents, neither investigated thoroughly. He's been employed, on and off, by a freight company called Vanties. I knew that name. Vanties is a subsidiary of the Aldridge Group, Marcus continued, currently in direct competition with 3 of your major North Atlantic infrastructure acquisitions. The room went very still. Theodore Aldridge, I said. He had dinner with your fiancé's father, Hargrove Sr., 12 days before the accident. A private meeting. No third parties. I can place them together. I can trace a payment from an Aldridge shell account to Firth's personal account 2 weeks prior to the collision. My hands were very still on the desk. They used her, I said. The working theory, Marcus said carefully, is that she was not the intended target. She was the instrument. Someone believed, correctly, as it turned out, that if something happened to her, there was a chance it would destabilize you, that it might give Hargrove leverage, or at minimum, create a disruption at a critical moment in your acquisitions. He paused. They assumed you would be moved by it. I absorbed that. They had calculated that her death would hurt me, and they had been right. And the cruelest part, they had calculated it correctly because everyone could see what I had refused to see. She had made herself visible through 7 years of relentless, quiet devotion, and everyone around me had known, and I had been the only one blind to it. I had made her a target through my own indifference to her. Where is Firth now? Bristol. He thinks it's over. And Aldridge? Celebrating his acquisition of a Scottish energy contract. He expected a difficult fight from you. Instead you've been occupied. Get me everything, I said. Every account. Every dealing. Every agreement that bends a law. I want it exhaustive and I want it fast. Marcus stood. And Hargrove? I thought about Celeste. Her perfect composure. Her strategic intelligence. The understanding we had that required nothing inconvenient. Did she know? Her father didn't involve her directly. A pause. But she knew you had as she described it, a persistent admirer. She mentioned it to her father in an email 6 weeks before the accident. Expressed concern it might complicate negotiations. I closed the file. End the engagement, I said. Today. Have legal prepare a full dissolution. Be generous. I don't want it ugly. Yes, sir. Then come back to me with Aldridge. I had been carrying it for 6 days. The envelope Mara gave me. I told myself I was waiting for the right moment, that I needed stillness to read it, that I would do it when the worst of what I was arranging was in motion. The truth was I was afraid. I had never been afraid of a piece of paper before. I sat on the floor of my study at 2 in the morning. No lights except the lamp beside me. The city quiet outside. I opened it. To the man who never looked, I've rewritten this letter 8 times. I keep trying to be clever about it, or kinder, or at least more dignified. The truth is that cleverness has nothing to do with what I want to say, and I've run out of patience with my own cowardice. The first time I saw you wasn't at the gala where I broke all those glasses. It was before that. You were at a public hearing about coastal development rights. You stood up in the back of the room and asked 3 questions that dismantled the entire opposition's argument in under 4 minutes. You weren't even supposed to be there. You just walked in, as though you owned the air itself. I was 19. I watched the room shift around you the way water shifts around stone. I didn't speak to you that day. I just thought, there is a person who actually understands how things work. Then at the gala, I broke the crystal. You were the one who spoke first. You were not kind. But I didn't blame you. I had just destroyed something expensive in a room full of people who were watching, and you were the sort of person this room made room for, and I was the sort of person rooms did not. After that I couldn't stop thinking about you. I know how that sounds. I know it's the kind of thing that sounds unhinged when you say it plainly. I tried to stop. I tried for nearly a year. I couldn't. So I tried something different. I thought, if I can't stop this, at least let it be useful. At least let something good come from it. That's why the coffee, the book, the car. I know you noticed some of it. Diana told me once, laughing, that you mentioned the coffee, that you said it was exactly right and you never asked where it came from because you were afraid the answer would mean you had to address it. I think that's the most honest thing anyone ever told me about you. You are not cruel. I want to say that clearly. I have known cruel men. You are not one of them. You are simply a person who moves through the world at a speed that doesn't leave room for noticing what isn't immediately in your path. I was always just outside your path. I don't say this to wound you. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and I would rather spend my last words on honesty than accusation. The honest thing is, I loved you. For years. The way you love a fixed star, are not expecting it to move toward you, just grateful that something that bright exists in the same sky. I bought 2 tickets to things. For years. Both of us knowing I'd go alone. I don't know why I kept doing it. Hope is a strange and stubborn thing. It lives well past the point where logic has given up on it. I heard about the engagement. I want you to know I am glad for you. Celeste Hargrove is accomplished and formidable and will push you in ways that matter. I hope she makes you happy. I hope you let her. I hope you let someone. That's the thing I worry about most, if I'm honest. Not that you didn't love me back, I was never foolish enough to expect that. But that you'll keep moving at that speed and miss everything again. That you'll arrive at 70 at the top of something enormous and find the view completely empty. Please don't do that. Please let something in. Eat properly. Your assistant worries. Sleep more than 4 hours. You are not, despite all evidence to the contrary, actually made of iron. If there's a version of this where you find out and you feel guilty, please don't. Or at least, please don't let it stop there. I wouldn't want to be a wound you carry. I'd want to be a reason you changed something. If I can be that for you even at this distance, that's more than I ever thought I'd manage. I love you completely. I loved you when you were unkind at that gala and when you didn't read my letter and when you sent my calls to voicemail. I loved you through all of it and I would do it again. I have no regrets on my side. Take care of yourself. W. The letter fell from my hands. Hit the floor. I sat in the lamplight and did not move for a very long time. She had written it 2 years ago. Before the engagement. Before the accident. She had written it expecting nothing, not death, not even a response. She had simply needed to say it somewhere it might eventually reach me. She had loved me with no expectation of return and she had never made it my problem and she had died waiting for an ambulance she delayed because she didn't want to ruin my party. And I had spent 7 years walking past her like she was furniture. I pressed my back against the wall and slid down it, put my face in my hands, and fell apart, completely and without dignity. The kind of grief that doesn't care about presentation. Diana found me there at 5 in the morning. She had a key for emergencies. She sat down on the floor next to me without saying a word. Stayed there until I could breathe again. She was, I realized, the only person left who had also known Ren. She used to ask how you were taking your coffee, Diana said quietly. She said she just wanted to make sure she got it right. Every single time she asked, like she might have missed something. I couldn't answer. She made me promise not to tell you it was her. She said you'd be embarrassed. I laughed. The sound was wrong. Broken at the edges. She knew me better than I knew myself. Yes, Diana said simply. She did. The fall of Theodore Aldridge took for months. It was not quick and it was not clean and I was not merciful. Marcus delivered the financial irregularities to the Financial Conduct Authority with full documentation. The shipping irregularities went to a journalist at a publication with a long memory for corporate malfeasance. The evidence connecting Firth to the Aldridge payroll went to a barrister I trusted. Colin Firth was arrested on a Tuesday. He wept in his driveway. I watched the footage once and felt nothing except tired. The Aldridge Group's primary contracts were absorbed by a consortium I quietly assembled over the course of 2 weeks. Theodore Aldridge spent 6 months in legal proceedings and ended them without the company his grandfather had built. He tried to reach me once through an intermediary. I didn't respond. Not out of cruelty. Simply because there was nothing to say. The Hargrove engagement dissolved with less drama than I expected. Celeste was efficient about it. Icily professional. As she left my office for the last time, she stopped at the door. Was it because of her? She asked. The girl? Partly. She considered that. I think, she said carefully, that I always knew you weren't entirely present. I assumed it was just how you were. I didn't realize there was a reason. There wasn't, I said. That's the point. There was no good reason. I was simply careless. She looked at me for a moment. Then she left. I found out about the tickets from Mara. I had gone to see her, in the end. Not for information. Just because she was the only other person in the world carrying the same particular weight, and I thought we owed each other the acknowledgement of that. She lived in a small house west of the city. She made tea. We sat at her kitchen table. She talked about you constantly, Mara said. Not bitterly. Factually. For years. I used to tell her to stop. That it was making her miserable. She said it wasn't misery, exactly. She said it was just orientation. Like how a compass points north whether you want it to or not. I sat with that. Did she know it wouldn't, that you'd never feel the same? Mara looked at her tea. She knew. She always knew. She was very intelligent. She just didn't think it mattered. She said some love isn't about reciprocity. It's just what you are. She went to a drawer, came back with a small cardboard box. Inside, ticket stubs, plays, concerts, one film screening, all in pairs, every seat double, one used, one pristine, spanning years. She kept them all, Mara said quietly. She never told me why. Maybe she thought someday she'd have a reason to show you. I picked up a ticket stub, a production of Hamlet at the National Theatre. 6 years ago. Seat A21 and A22. Row A. The best seats in the house. She had saved for those. She had sat alone in seat A21 and kept A22 empty beside her like a held door. I set the stub down very gently, like it might break. The memorial took 7 months to complete. I bought a piece of land outside the city, rolling, west-facing, the kind of place that caught late afternoon light, and held it. I had thought about a formal monument, something carved and legible, her name in stone. But then I thought about the letter. I'd want to be a reason you changed something. I built a garden instead, not a memorial garden in the formal sense. Nothing funerary or cold. A real garden, the kind that required maintenance and patience and changed with the seasons. White roses, because she had worn a white rose pin to her coat at the one event I could now remember seeing her look entirely at ease. A small stone path, a bench at the western end where the light came in at an angle at dusk that made everything look briefly gold. I placed a small bronze plate on the bench. No epitaph, just her name, Wren Callaway. She loved generously and without condition. The foundation came a year later, an education fund for students from backgrounds that made ambition feel like trespass. The kind of young person who stood at the edges of rooms that weren't built for them. I named it after the letter's closing line, Fixed Star Foundation. At the inaugural event I said 3 sentences. Someone I failed to know properly believed that love was its own reward, independent of outcome. I spent a long time thinking that was naive. I now believe it was the most sophisticated thing I've ever been told. Then I left early. I go to the garden in the evenings when I can. I sit on the bench at dusk and watch the light change. I don't talk to her, exactly, but I think toward her. If that's a thing, I think. You would have found this ridiculous. A man building a garden for a woman he never properly looked at. You would have been mortified on my behalf. I think. I'm eating properly. Diana checks. I think. I let something in, lately. I'm not entirely sure what. But it's there. Mara came once. She stood at the edge of the path and looked at the roses for a long time. Then she sat down next to me on the bench and said nothing. We stayed there until the light was gone. As she left she stopped at the gate. She would have liked you, she said. The version of you that built this. She would have thought you were worth knowing. I'm not sure I was. No, Mara said. But you're becoming it. She latched the gate behind her. One evening late in autumn, I found something I hadn't placed there. A small tin, tucked against the base of the stone bench. Inside, 2 cookies. Homemade. A little burnt at the edges. Wrapped in paper. A note in Mara's handwriting. She made a batch once and burned the first ones and threw them out. I used her recipe. First attempt. They're probably not good. She would have sent them anyway. I sat there with the tin in my lap. The light going out of the sky. I ate one. It was a little burnt. It was the best thing I'd ever tasted. The first time I actually smiled, the real one. The kind that comes from somewhere deep rather than somewhere calculated. It was there on that bench. Late October. The roses nearly done for the season. One white bloom still holding on at the far end of the path. Just the one. Stubborn. And very bright in the failing light. I sat there for a long time. I'm doing better, I thought toward her. Just like you asked. The wind moved through the garden. The last white rose swayed. And held. End.